Welcome to the Cimetrics Analytika Users Forum. So this is an event we have for our customers every other month. And the goal of the Analytika Users Forum is to provide a platform for our customers to learn from each other about their own experiences using Analytika and facilitate collaboration between each other. For people that are Analytika customers, they know that the analyst assigned to each customer has monthly or so meetings with the customers to talk about their issues, and those meetings usually expand and evolve to talk about things outside of just Analytika, and having that time to get all the stakeholders in a room together once a month has been really valuable for them. So we wanted to take that model and expand that to all of our customers so that they all benefit from the conversations that we have with our customers about Analytika and beyond, energy efficiency, BACNET security, in this case, vendor management, enterprise management, and so on. So we set aside this time every other month to talk about a focused topic, but also to answer any questions that might come up about Analytika and Cimetrics. So just before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this, and if you have a portal account, go ahead and log into your Analytika portal, and feel free to share the portal at the end of the presentation and show off anything that you've discovered that's pretty cool, or ask questions, or we're here to help you. So I'm going to do a quick intro of the Analytika Users Forum. We'll go around the room and do introductions. Then we'll dive right into the focus topic for this month, which is BACNET security. And then we'll close with Q&A, and the Q&A is absolutely anything. It's not restricted to BACNET security or even Analytika. And we'll talk about some plans we have for future Analytika Users Forum. So what is Cimetrics? For those that aren't familiar with the Analytika product, Analytika services include continuous data monitoring from all your building systems, meters, any other equipment that you might have in the building that we can connect to. We provide ongoing commissioning service, engineering, consulting, and the Analytika Portal can also be provided as a software service for those customers that like to do it all in-house by themselves. But basically, once we have the data, your energy data and your equipment data, the sky's the limit to what we can do with it. But specifically, we solve owner challenges like running their facilities more efficiently and effectively, energy savings opportunities, which is what most of our customers are focused on. Task prioritization, vendor management, KPI tracking, those become particularly important for our customers that are focused on ISO 50001, compliance tracking and reporting, and ensure that having the data ensures your energy efficiency investments. So we're here to create better buildings through saving energy costs, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, improving comfort, safety, and air quality, prioritizing and streamlining O&M tasks, and helping you achieve your sustainability goals. So why the Analytika Users Forum? Like I said, learn how to achieve your goals using your Analytika installation, see best practices, not just from the Analytika team, but from other customers, ask questions, and share your best practices and your experience. I'll start. My name is Hadas Webb. I head the analytics team, which is responsible for the Analytika service and product. And we have two very exciting panelists here, Jim Lee, who's president and CEO of Cimetrics, and Jim Butler, who is CTO of Cimetrics. Would you like to introduce yourselves, Jim and Jim?
Absolutely. Hi, Jim Lee here, and I'll be talking a lot, so I'll pass it right to Jim Butler. Jim?
Hi, Jim Butler. I'm primarily involved in the BACNET side of our business at this point, and my focus over the past couple of years, more than a couple, has been cybersecurity, leading the IT working group in the BACNET committee. We developed BACNET Secure Connect, which we'll talk about a little bit today.
Well, I'm gonna dive into a PowerPoint, which will take us about 20 minutes or so, maybe 25, and then we will obviously entertain Q&A. We can do introductions after that, and answer any questions you might have on cybersecurity for building automation in general, and ManageBACNET is our topic right now. So let me see if I can share the screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
I can see it.
Good. All right, so for those of you on the analytics side of the business who have been working with Analytika, you may or may not know Cimetrics is a 32-year-old company. We actually got our start networking single chip computers in many different markets, but eventually settled on building automation as our primary area of focus. So we've been involved in BACNET since well before the standard was published. And we were the first to create BACNET protocol stacks, which are basically computer implementations in software of the BACNET protocol, which we licensed to about 60% of the building automation companies worldwide. That includes HVAC controls, fire alarms, security systems, lighting controls, etc. So while we've been working on analytics for almost 24 years, we've been working on communications for 30 plus years, 32 years. So we'll give you a little view as to what's been going on the other side of our business that you're maybe not as familiar with. Okay. So if we look out at the history of computing, the internet, computer networks over time, we've gone from the left side of the diagram where people were implementing computer systems, the World Wide Web, the internet was growing, etc. And eventually we arrived at this point around the year 2000 when networks really took off and became ubiquitous. When that happened, as you can see from the bottom of the diagram, different people started participating in nefarious behavior in terms of viruses, phishing, famous international intrigue like the Stuxnet virus that the CIA and the Israelis planted in the Iranian nuclear system. Well, that trend has continued to accelerate. And when I was thinking about this talk this morning, I was thinking about, hey, how many phishing emails do I get a day? And granted, I am the president of a company that works on cybersecurity, but I get at least 5 phishing attempts a day. And some of them are pretty sophisticated. People using my credentials and name to try to go out and phish my employees. People that are coming in claiming to have invoices, American Express coming in and claiming that my account has been hacked, except I don't have an American Express account. So, I mean, we can see the drumbeat of this going on. We see a lot of things going on in the insurance world and risk management, and the noose of cybersecurity is tightening around our industry. But it's been something we've been worried about for a long time. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about the kinds of attacks that happen on cybersecurity. And let me just say that when we look at building automation and control networks overall, what we have are sophisticated networks that largely used to be proprietary, so through security through obscurity. And as they've become more and more open with technologies like BACNET, basically, we've opened the attack surface. As the industry has moved from using proprietary technologies or industry-specific technologies like BACNET MSTP, which is a twisted pair network, to IP-centric controllers, which is by far the direction of the industry, we're basically opening up more and more attack points, not only into the critical infrastructure that we have, but also as attack vectors into the enterprise as a whole. In other words, if I make every variable air volume box a network drop on my main IP network, I'm basically opening up security holes for somebody to come in and attack my enterprise, my financial networks, anything using that network. we'll talk in a minute about what has been done over the last 20 years in terms of remedial security, and we're going to talk about where we're going. But just looking at this diagram, you can see all of the different kinds of attacks that people have been pushing out there. I mentioned phishing already, but malware, denial of service attacks, remote attacks, zero-day exploits, ransomware. We frequently hear about ransomware attacks, social engineering attacks, and front-end operating system vulnerability. So lots of ways for bad guys, a lot of innovation on their part to see how they can get into these networks over time. I'm going to flip it over to Jim Butler a minute, and he can tell us about defense in depth in cybersecurity and how we go about securing these networks. Jim?
All right, thanks, Jim. So defense in depth is probably a term that you've heard about a little bit. In principle, it's pretty simple. The idea is that we want to use multiple ways of thwarting the attackers at every level of our security architecture. The slide we have there is kind of an eye chart, but I'd like to give one pretty simple example, which is two-factor authentication. I imagine that many of you have confronted this. For example, when you want to access a bank's website, they might want to have you log in using a username and password, but also they might want you to enter a code that they send you, or to use an authenticator application. That's one example of using defense in depth to protect the login process. And of course, we have to think about building automation as well. How can we apply defense in depth to building automation? And a lot of the same methods and techniques that the IT industry has pioneered are potentially applicable to what we're doing in building automation. So Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Jim. So, I've mentioned that building automation networks can be attack vectors into general networks, but here are some examples of people who have hacked building systems themselves. So that is absolutely on the table. And the risk is real, and these kinds of attacks are continuing to grow. Municipal governments and their facilities are some of the most attacked items in the country right now. But you probably heard in the news that there were some arrests in Poland this morning of some Russian hackers who have been extorting on the order of $6 million out of different companies and people in ransomware attacks, even just this morning. So obviously a lot going on here. But so the question is traditionally, what have we done with building automation networks to secure them? Well, originally, the use of proprietary protocols limited interconnectivity. It was almost impossible to communicate outside of a particular manufacturer's system. If you knew the system, you could hack into it, because largely they were not protected. But proprietary protocols kept people out. Another thing you can do is physically separate your building automation networks from your IT networks. And that's more difficult in modern systems, especially when you want to use web browsers and other virtual technology to run those buildings from afar. But there is still a possibility, and in certain secure military situations, you will see physical separation of networks. And finally, in terms of virtual separation of networks, the technology that's largely been employed since about the year 2000 is virtual private networks and VLANs. And this would be a situation where the building automation networks would be sequestered logically and separated logically on the network system from the IT networks so that they can have their own sandbox. Now, that's what we've used up till now, and it's basically all the protection we have, but it doesn't provide that defense in depth that Jim Butler just mentioned. So, once somebody gets in to that virtual private network, once again, they get the run of the network. So we're looking at ways for the industry as a whole to get better cybersecurity, and we've actually been on that quest for a long time. So let's just talk for a minute about the economics, and then I'm going to skip back to how we're going about that security process. But just to give you an idea of the economic magnitude of this problem, the Department of Defense spends about $30 billion a year to secure 8 million computers that they have, that they operate. And the Department of Defense has, say, 8 million computers here, but they have 2 billion embedded nodes across the DoD. And the current budget for securing OT and these operating technology networks is 150 million. So we have a huge gap in spending and basically a huge gap in knowledge. But it turns out that most of these nodes over here have the same capability of being infected or doing damage as these 8 million here. This is going to be a big growth area, and for all of our organizations, there's going to have to be quite a bit of capital, but I should say operating expense. And this is something I want to really stress here. Cybersecurity is not a product. It's not something you buy. It's not something you specify at the beginning of a process when you're building a building, because it changes too fast. Yes, there will be capital expenses up front, but you really have to view cybersecurity as an operating expense item. So when your buildings were built 10, 20, 30 years ago, no one contemplated this as being a particular problem. So it's not built into capital, and the process of actually securing the buildings does not lend itself well to being a capital expense. So think of it as an operating expense. So I mentioned that Cimetrics has been in the communication technology business for many years. This is just a list of some of the people that we've supplied BACNET to worldwide. You can see HVAC controls companies, lighting companies, security, fire, etc. So the key is that we have some responsibility to this broad customer base we have to innovate in our existing communication platforms and build in cybersecurity. And because of that, we've been working on that process for a long time. So I put together a little timeline here, which shows the beginnings of heating in 1820, central heating and central air conditioning in 1926, and the Arab oil embargo and energy shocks associated with that, and the introduction of direct digital control in 1983. By 1995, we have BACNET, but the internet is coming up very quickly. Remember, BACNET is largely designed before the internet comes into its own. By 1999, the BACNET committee innovates and introduces BACNET IP. Now, most building automation systems today are based on BACNET IP, at least at the management and larger controller level. And we're going from MSTP or twisted pair networks, the lower level of these architectures, to all IP connected devices fairly quickly now. Products to do that were introduced between 3 and 5 years ago by most manufacturers, and they're absolutely mainstream in the process today. In 1999, I founded the BACNET Manufacturers Association, which is now called BACNET International. And Jim Butler was the founding manager of the BACNET test lab. So we have a lot of experience testing and putting products out in the field over the years. So now to get back on the cybersecurity track, if you look at cybersecurity through VPNs and VLANs, really as soon as the internet started to take off, that became the way that things were secured. But in the BACNET committee, and those of us that are involved in this communication were concerned that that wasn't enough. So in 2004, in that time frame, there was an effort called BACNET Addendum G, where the best and brightest minds of our industry got together to design a security system top to bottom for BACNET. At Cimetrics, we hated the idea. We thought that it would never fly because of this primary reason. Information technology typically runs in 3-year cycles. So if you look at your iPhone, your laptop, your switches, the fabric and the technology of IT moves with a 3-year time horizon, whereas building automation moves with a 30-year time horizon. We knew that by the time BACNET Addendum G was out and published and implemented, that it would be wildly obsolete. And our vision was to use the communication technology du jour, whatever happens to be in vogue at that time, that IT is using, whether it's TCP/IP or wireless or wired or whatever the communication medium would be. We want to use that standard IT information and take the real value of BACNET, which is the data definitions, the application layer, the metadata, the things that allow us to do the kind of analytics that we do in Analytika. We want that application layer in BACNET to survive, but we don't really care what that communication technology is, as long as it's up to date and most secure. So this idea of having a BACNET version that was IT friendly became what we worked on. And in 2009, Cisco partnered with us and funded us to help develop BACNET IT. And we were going to quickly push that out to the market. And unfortunately, it took 10 years to do that. That standard was renamed BACNET SC for BACNET Secure Connect and released in November of 2019. So manufacturers have busily been developing products for BACNET SC. However, a number of pieces were left on the cutting room floor in order to get BACNET SC standardized. And so realizing that, as the guys, Jim Butler running this process over time, we decided that what we would do is basically gather our friends and competitors in the industry together and quickly figure out a way that we would add to the standard so that we could have interoperable cybersecurity. The danger was that with BACNET SC on its own, we could end up in a situation where we could undo 30 years of open systems by having proprietary tools and management structures on top of BACNET SC that would lock things up. So what we've done with largely the most proactive and largest players in the industry is work on a standard over the last 2 years. And it's actually a framework. And we call that framework ManageBACNET. And ManageBACNET is going to provide that interoperable security that we've been looking for an industry for a long time. It's pretty far along. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim Butler now. And he's going to give us an introduction to BACNET Secure Connect. So I'll just walk these in. Jim?
Okay, thanks, Jim. So what is BACNET Secure Connect? It is the newest method of communicating within BACNET systems. As Jim said, it was released in November of 2019. So it's been out there for 2 years now, and there's a lot of interest in it in the industry. But to understand what it does, it's good to compare it to the systems that we have today. So if you look at the left side of this slide, you see sort of a cartoon representation of what a BACNET network might look like today, with numerous BACNET devices connected to MSTP. That's a low-speed network, twisted pair wiring. And you have larger controllers connected to a BACNET IP networks, as well as building automation, workstations, and servers. And BACNET routers tie these networks together so that you can build larger systems with devices that are optimized in terms of cost and functionality. Now, the key point about BACNET systems today is that I can come along with a new device and attach it either to the MSTP network or to the IP network, and I have effectively joined the network. There are essentially no barriers to me doing that from a security standpoint. Now, some building owners have taken the step of putting their BACNET IP networks in VLANs and also using VPNs for remote access primarily. That is one security method, and it's certainly a lot better than nothing. But the industry wanted more, so BACNET Secure Connect was developed. And the key point about BACNET Secure Connect is that it leverages modern information technology to provide cybersecurity in a way that BACNET IP does not. BACNET Secure Connect and BACNET IP are similar in that they both use IP networks. But we think that Secure Connect will be preferred by cybersecurity conscious customers in the future because it is based on state-of-the-art IT cybersecurity. The most important component of BACNET Secure Connect is that it's built on TLS 1.3. This is the latest version of what you may remember as SSL or secure sockets back many years ago. The technology has evolved. The algorithms for protecting the networks have evolved. So when you connect to your bank's website, chances are very, very high that you're using either TLS 1.2 or perhaps TLS 1.3 to secure that connection. So one thing that I want to emphasize about BACNET Secure Connect, which is a little different from how your browser might connect to your bank's server, is that in BACNET Secure Connect, we require that every device have a digital certificate that is signed by a locally controlled certificate authority. So this means if you have a VAV controller that's BACNET SC, then it will have a certificate, as well as all the larger controllers and the servers. Any device that communicates using BACNET SC must have a digital certificate, and the right kind of digital certificate. And this allows your network managers to restrict which devices are allowed to join the network. The student doing a little project can't just walk up to your IP network and start talking to your BACNET SC devices. So this is a good thing from a cybersecurity standpoint, but of course it places a burden on the building owner to manage the certificates for the building owner's facilities. So another important thing about BACNET SC is that it uses these things that we call BACNET SC hubs. You can see two of them in the diagram. All BACNET SC devices connect to a hub, and they send messages through the hub that they're connected to, both unicast and broadcast messages. But they also have the option of communicating peer-to-peer. You can see the dashed red line over on the right side. That's an example of peer-to-peer communication between BACNET SC devices. And how do you expand your existing system that uses BACNET IP and MSTP? to use BACNET SC? Well, companies will be offering products that do routing between BACNET IP and BACNET SC. There may already be products on the market that do that. This is just another kind of BACNET router, and it will allow you to easily migrate your systems at a pace that makes sense for you. So I think that's probably enough on BACNET SC. Jim, I'll turn it back to you.
Super, Jim. Thanks. So just to stress, these technologies are new. We're in a fairly slow-moving industry. Many companies are offering BACNET Secure Connect products today, and I would expect to see early BACNET, ManageBACNET product offerings appearing. I know Cimetrics, our company, will be introducing a few ManageBACNET products at the ASHRAE winter meeting and AHR exposition this January. But really, over the course of the next few years, you'll see this technology begin to become available. And once again, no one's going to take a lot of you are very large customers, pharmaceuticals, universities, healthcare. Nobody's going to make you rip out what you have today, but there's going to be an upgrade path where as buildings are renovated, built, or you decide to do a security upgrade, the security technology can be phased in, leaving the insecure technology operating the way it does today. So I mentioned we gathered a very broad group across the industry of the controls companies that are interested in this kind of technology and moving it forward. So we've been working together. Jim Butler's been running this process now for about 2 years, and this will culminate in documents which will be published around January of 2022. And those documents are then going to be handed over to the ASHRAE BACNET committee and a special working group inside of ASHRAE, which is concerned with cybersecurity. The term ManageBACNET has been given to ASHRAE and will become an ASHRAE-owned, it is an ASHRAE-owned trademark at this point. So the technology that this group is developing is basically open to the public and is being given to ASHRAE and potentially other standards bodies to make sure that it sticks out in the field. All right, so we've talked a lot about ManageBACNET so far without actually telling you what it is. So what we're going to do is quickly run through how ManageBACNET works. So today, you're down here with the existing devices that you have in the field, which are BACNET controllers. And as time goes on, Cimetrics is going to build ManageBACNET technology into those protocol stacks, and our customers, the controls companies, will then quickly have them in their products. So the end controllers will actually be loaded with this ManageBACNET technology. Supervising that technology, we have an appliance, which we call a local network and security manager. This is a product that Cimetrics will make, and we will also license that, and it will appear in different controls companies, our customers' products over time. That local network and security manager is a traffic cop. It handles setting up a lot of the security parameters like security certificates and policies and firewall policies that go in the network. It will also act as a hub. Jim Butler mentioned hubs in the BACNET SC architecture. So on the right over here, we have a box that says Managed Routing Firewall. This is an application layer firewall in BACNET that will go between legacy insecure BACNET networks and ManageBACNET, and that will connect together. If you have other devices like Modbus, if you were interfacing meters, or you had legacy Echelon, manufacturers will produce ManageBACNET gateways that sequester that insecure technology down below and provide an interface to the secured network to allow those legacy components to happen. In addition, one of the main functions for security is actually to monitor these networks. And one might ask the question, whose responsibility is it to monitor the networks? And traditionally that's an IT opportunity. That's what IT does. And they have technology that they call security operating centers, or SOCs, which are monitoring the IT networks. And we believe they will also monitor the OT networks. And so one of the things that the appliance does is it gathers up all the information that they're used to seeing for network management. Although we're not exactly doing IT networks, we're doing OT. We're feeding that information up to their SOC, so the Chief Information Security Officer can manage that information the same way they manage their other security information from their other networks. The Global Network and Security Manager at the top is a way to do a distributed or cloud-based architecture to mirror a number of the devices that are going on in the appliance. So if you have an enterprise, we'll be able to supervise and enforce security policies across enterprises at that level. Jim Butler, you want to backfill a little on this for me? Anything I missed?
Yeah, we had a question in chat about whether hubs are hardware or software. You should think about all of the red boxes here as being software functions that could appear in a variety of different hardware devices. So Jim mentioned some of our product plans, but I would expect that building automation system manufacturers will take some of these same functions and build them into their particular hardware platforms. And in some cases, such as BACNET SC hubs or the local network and security manager, these will also run in virtual machines in customers' data centers. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how these functions are implemented in software and hardware within a system. Back to you, Jim.
Super. So we can certainly delve more into this, but this is an architecture that you'll be seeing. So we've talked about a structure, but the question is what is being managed? What does ManageBACNET actually mean? And I'm going to drop in this list of things that are actually being managed in ManageBACNET. So device onboarding. How do I configure a security network? And certificate management. So what is a certificate? It's actually the security key that goes in every device. Well, what happens when a facilities guy needs to change a VAV box now? Well, guess what? He needs the security keys to that VAV box if he's going to be able to work on it, get in it, change it out. So there's a lot of growing and learning that has to be done in the channel, in the local building automation contractors and the branch offices for people to be able to even work with this. And they're going to be a series of tools. Let me give you another example of device onboarding. When I build a new building, IT is usually not even present, not even wired by the time the HVAC stuff has to be powered up. So it turns out we need to have the ability to create networks, secure networks in a new construction building, and then hand that over to IT departments once it gets fired up. And so that's a whole process that has to go on there. Asset management. One of the things that we laugh about it in the industry, but people don't know where the controllers are. They don't necessarily know where the devices are. So having a much better map of what you actually have to keep it secure is paramount in what we're working on here. How do I control what goes between those legacy networks and the secure networks? Well, I need to have routing firewall policies. And so that's an area that ManageBACNET takes care of. Network security and configuration, backup and restore. Well, if I have a single manufacturer, backup and restore controllers, if they get corrupted, is certainly something we can do. But what happens if I have a multi-vendor system? What if I have trained chillers on a Johnson Controls network? Can Johnson back up and restore the trained chillers right now? The answer is no. But by the time we get done with these standards, the manufacturers who are providing technology at your site will be able to back up and restore at least to some remedial level programs and software that are in controllers in the field. Server controller and recovery, firmware tracking and version control, integration with IT, as I mentioned. So security incident management, these SIEM systems, and migration of non-BACNET systems. So a lot of stuff we're working on, and we're not going to get into that because we're going to be short on time. But I wanted to at least give you a roadmap for where we're going. So you can see that BACNET SC was released 2 years ago. We're working on a number of these other technologies. So you can see these ManageBACNET collaboration started. That was 2 years ago. We've already innovated in the BACNET committee on interoperable security configuration. Jim Butler has just voted out of his committee something called Addendum CC, which went through its third public review. So that's just waiting for the ASHRAE machinations before it gets standardized. The ManageBACNET manufacturer guidelines are under construction and will be done in a few months. And once again, software stacks and tools are basically being released now and will be released over the next couple of years. The last big technology milepost that we need to get to zero trust is authorization. And this is something that we're working on in BACNET right now. So that's basically an overview of ManageBACNET. Any questions?
Thank you, Jim and Jim. There is one other question in the chat. Are BACNET SC certificates managed, assigned on-prem or from a third-party authority? And are certificates also assigned to BACNET MSTP devices? That was from Mike Haas.
Jim, you want to take it?
Yeah, we'll start with MSTP. No, there are no certificates required for MSTP. The certificates only apply to BACNET Secure Connect. And that's because the certificates are using TLS, and TLS is a technology that only is used on IP networks. So BACNET IP, you could say, well, that's using IP networks, which of course is true, but BACNET IP was never intended to use digital certificates. So at least for now, digital certificates will only be used with BACNET Secure Connect devices, which makes the problem of managing them a little bit easier, I suppose. So let's see. The other part of the question was about who is going to manage and assign certificates. So there's some flexibility here, but the important thing is that you want the assignment of certificates to be locally controlled. Now, that might mean that you contract with some third-party provider to manage the certificates for your site, but you only get the cybersecurity that you want if the certificates from someone else's site can't be used to connect a device to your site. So the signing authority for the certificates has to be unique to your site, whether that's something that your group manages or whether that's something that you contract out to another firm to manage for you. Back to you, Hadas.
One more question came in also from Darius. What happens to BBMD with SC?
There are no BBMDs in BACNET Secure Connect. The closest analog to a BBMD in Secure Connect would be the BACNET SC hubs. However, they're different than BBMDs in a number of respects, and we probably don't have time to go into all the details, but BBMDs only forward broadcast messages in a BACNET IP system. but BACNET SC hubs, which by the way, can be anywhere in your system. They don't have to be on the same subnet as your existing devices. The BACNET SC hubs forward broadcast messages, but they also forward point-to-point messages between devices that are not communicating on a peer-to-peer basis.
Okay, I think we need to get on to introductions and general discussion, but I just want to say that security is a very, very complex topic, and we're all learning together, and it's advancing quite rapidly now. But I'd encourage you, if you have further questions, we'd be happy to chat with you. Talk to your analyst, talk to Hadass. They can point you to us, and we can hopefully point you down this road to getting your facility secured, as well as working well with Analytika. But thanks very much for hearing us out on this, and fire away with questions offline later. Thank you.
So yeah, usually we start off the meeting with introductions, and I think some people chose to stay anonymous when we were kicking this off, but I do want to open this up to any introductions. Darius is a regular attendee of these meetings. Thank you for joining, Darius. Michal from EnviroEye in Ireland is here, and he has some experience with Analytika. And I see a few others here. So would anyone like to do an intro or comment about their experiences or ask any questions?
Sure, Alice, I can chime in. Darius Raskowski, Director of Engineering and Utilities with Tufts University. Sorry, with the groggy throat, a little under the weather. Kids brought something home as usual. So we have a large legacy and sophisticated BACNET infrastructure that handles everything from toxic gases that are dealing with things that are nano level technology studies that you would see in like IBM Semiconductor, but all doing this in a research level environment with lesser experienced PIs and researchers. We're talking about high school kids showing up who probably have never seen a fume hood before and working in an environment where they have silane gas that can explode. So there's a lot of operational procedures that have to be taken into consideration, and having BACNET be a point of exposure forces us into Modbus and all these other communication protocols and just dumb down UL hardwiring so that we can keep things safe. So you're going to see a lot of that kind of transpiring with just hard-coded UL stuff happening just to make sure that you don't create exposure in these systems and the process in a lab can be sent awry. But we're also running into a lot of problems with funding. Forecasts for this roadmap are very difficult to understand without an inventory, and understanding each step and how those inventories have to be upgraded or caught up is starting to become a multi-million-dollar investment. So if you have a budget, great. If you don't have a budget, start thinking about it, because this is something that we're really running into as a obstacle in our operations team understanding. One of the slides that was really important was the ITIS versus OT investments. And I think I might borrow that as a scaling factor to communicate to our ops team how much money they're setting aside for IT and how much they should be setting aside for us. But this is really helpful. So I'd like to actually talk to you about borrowing some of this content or throwing you in front of our IT and ops folks to do the same dog and pony show.
Oh, we'd be happy to do that. And I would point out that we're actually working in Washington, D.C. right now to try to change the dialogue, because historically, and this is a problem with Analytika and anything to do with buildings, that capital only enters buildings when they're constructed or when they're major renovations. But a lot of things like energy efficiency or cybersecurity are not capital items. They're processes that have to work over time. So we're trying to work with accountants, with the Department of Energy and others to really bring people around on the financial side of the business to understand that they have to fund operating things. we can't, predetermine everything that's going to go into the building the next 100 years. Really, that's the way we've been operating with the Construction Specification Institute and how we've constructed buildings. We put everything in up front and then we walk away. The building acts as a bond. So I think that happy to help you with that, Darius, and we can talk to you offline about those business and financial arguments, because you're spot on. This isn't going to be as expensive as securing IT, but it's going to be expensive, and it has to come.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Do we have any IT people on the phone, or are we mostly energy controls and buildings people here?
It's a quiet group today, Jim. I think
Right.
that ties along with the security theme for this presentation. We'll keep everyone anonymous.
I do see a new question there in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Couldn't you just physically tap the MSTP bus with the BACNET SC environment and evade BACNET SC protections?
Excellent question. So I don't know how easy it would be to bring up the architecture slide again, Hadas, but
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, I'm not sure who was doing the share. If it was.
That was me. I'll bring it up. There you go, Jim.
Okay, thank you. So in the sort of the lower right, you can see BACNET IP and BACNET MSTP devices. These are what we would consider to be unsecure at this time, even if VLANs are used for restricting access to the BACNET IP network. But yeah, someone could come along and attach a device to MSTP, and then through a standard BACNET router, get access to the BACNET SC devices. So you'll notice that red block, managed routing firewall, which is above the block that says BACNET IP and BACNET MSTP. Our vision is that migration of existing systems will require not just BACNET routers, but also routers that have firewall-like capabilities. And I'm not talking specifically about the kind of firewall that you would get from a Cisco, for example, but rather a firewall that is knowledgeable about BACNET services and can restrict the messages that flow between the secure part of the network, which is using BACNET SC, and the older parts of the network, which use BACNET IP or BACNET MSTP. So firewall functionality is the key to thwarting those types of attacks.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks for the question, Mike.
Looks like we ran out the clock, Hadas.
Yeah. It's November. We do these every other month. So our next session will be in January. Some ideas and requests we've had for future topics include Analytika for process, enterprise management, Analytika support for ISO 50001. Cimetrics will actually be giving a presentation through Association of Energy Engineers on ISO 50001 and how we can support that. That's coming up in January. So sign up to be notified about future events at analytika.com/Analytika Users Forum. Learn more about Analytika, and contact me at hweb@cimetrics.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.